South Africa, 160, West Indies, 97 for the loss of seven. 17 wickets on day one. Sometimes we are concerned about test matches ending in 2 and 3 days, Deighton Smith. And usually when we have that concern, it's the West Indies looking to lose in that period of time. But we've actually got a match now that is probably going to finish within 3 days or so. But the result probably at this stage still very much open. What are your thoughts
Quite
after
agree.
this?
Well, Philip, I'll tell you this, right? They say that Test cricket is a dying product and that excitement comes in the form of T20 cricket. But 17 wickets today, fantastic bowling, great to see. And I can't think of anybody who did not think that this was an exciting day of cricket.
Yes, certainly an exciting day of cricket. They say test match is dying. I would go further. I would say we're probably killing it. I understand that this test match is the first test match played in Guyana for a period of like 11 years. And there was some discussion about the small crowd. But Dayton, if you have survived without something for 11 years, I
Yeah.
mean, unless it is something that is one of the main things. What do we want? We need food, we need shelter, we need clothing. Those are the basics, huh? And if we have those, anything else that we're deprived of for a period of time, you learn to live without. You don't miss it.
Quite agree. But I'll give you another view on that, Philip. We have to understand the age in which we live, In the past, the popularity of Test cricket was rightly judged on the size of the crowds. But the truth is, there are so many people now who sit at their desks at work and watch cricket, sit in the comfort of their home and watch it. The fact that they're not at the ground does not mean they're not enjoying it. Take me, for instance. I watched every ball today, but I wasn't there. And I'm sure that there were many people all around the world glued to this game because it really was riveting. So perhaps I do like the idea of having the atmosphere around the ground, having a crowd, but I think we should also be measuring the audiences that are watching from television if we really want to take a proper gauge as to whether test cricket is dead or not.
Yeah, food for thought. I remember some years ago, one of my associates in the media, he made the point that the crowds don't really matter. It's all about television now. And I said to him back then, this was more than 6 years ago. I said to him back then that the crowd is still important because the crowd adds to the atmosphere in terms of those who are watching the event. It looks like, but if you see a lot of
Quite agree.
people tend to want to be there. And also, the crowds have an impact on the players. If you doubt that, listen to the players, to the athletes who took part in the recent Olympics, and many of them who were interviewed commented on the fact that they were so happy that there were crowds to enjoy the spectacle because it was a challenge for them. Then the crowds were limited on the last occasion. And the basketballers who played to wooden figures in the stands have been saying the same thing. So crowds are important. I don't know if West Indies recognize that because first class cricket now has been taken away from the majority of the various jurisdictions, and I think that is in itself is a good way of killing the sport from a spectator point of view in the region.
Another dimension to this again, to Philip. Remember, in the past, crowds were very important from the economic aspect. The money that you received at the gate was very important. These days, if you sign a television rights contract for 25 million, it doesn't matter too much if you collect 400,000 at the gates. So people are making economic decisions now rather than necessarily decisions based on the atmosphere at the ground. Now, I'm not disagreeing with you that the atmosphere is important. I'm just trying to say that we are in a different time, and we just have to reassess the whole thing and try to determine what we need to do to get that atmosphere back at the ground. There are many days that we watch West Indies play, you and I, because we are diehard fans. And at the end of the day, we have a lot of criticisms to make. Let me start on a very positive note, and I think there's some good things that we have to say about West Indies today. And let me start before cricket started. The selectors had a tough choice to make before they started play. And we criticize them often. And they chose to play Shamar Joseph instead of Kemar Roach. which had to be a tough choice. Kemar is the most experienced of our pace bowlers. He has more wickets than any of them by a long way. He is still a very skillful bowler. They chose the pace of Shamar Joseph. And I have to say it was a good choice. Nothing bad to say about Kemar, but the truth is, you can't argue with a man who's being picked and picked up a fifer on a day when he was unplayable. So kudos to the selectors. Secondly, again, we struggle a lot with the new ball where we go for too many runs. And today, after the first over, which was a bit loose, the West Indies pace bowlers were excellent. They were excellent in line, excellent in length, and they were excellent in movement, both ways. When you have a batting side like South Africa, 20 for 3 at the first water break, you have been bowling well. Not only were they picking up wickets, but there were no runs available. That means pressure on the batsman, especially when the ball is moving around. You're not scoring and you're thinking any of these balls could have my name on it. So kudos to the selectors, kudos to our fast bowlers who did a fantastic job in that first half of the day.
Yeah, I have no problem giving kudos to the selectors for sure. But to my mind, it was a no-brainer. I go back to the situation when we went to England during COVID, and Shannon Gabriel, who had been out of cricket for a little while prior to that, and had some, I think it had some sort of surgery. Then there wasn't a whole lot of cricket being played anyhow, and we ended up with what? It was 3 back-to-back Test matches in England, and someone in their wisdom figured that our premier fast bowler, who was not at peak fitness, should play all 3. And you may recall how that worked out.
Yeah.
Here we have a situation where Roach didn't play in England, but we're going to have 2 back-to-back tests in Trinidad and Guyana. And I've heard all sorts of debates about the conditions in Trinidad and Guyana, but over the years, despite all the debates, I haven't really seen a lot of differences. And one would have expected the fact that 2 spinners were played should have told you what the selectors themselves expected the condition. So why would you put an aging fast bowler like Kemar Roach to play back-to-back Test matches in conditions where the expectation is that it will be hard work for fast bowlers? That, to me, that doesn't make sense. And I thought that
go ahead.
No, I was simply saying that from the beginning, it was obvious to me that you would want Shamar Joseph to play in Guyana, not only from the PR point of view, but it's his home ground and is the psychological aspects, the level of comfort. I can't think of any reason why you would not want him to play there.
Yeah, I'm not.
Seals was bowling well, and you don't want to break Seals' rhythm. So it was always obvious to me that Roach was going to play the match in Trinidad, and barring something remarkable, Joseph would come in for the other game. That, to my mind, that was a no-brainer.
Philip, your logic is flawless, but there's one thing that you did omit, and I think you know this happens all the time. A bowler of Roach's stature, and let us be clear, he didn't bowl badly in Trinidad. I mean, he wasn't particularly penetrating, but he didn't bowl badly. You know, whenever you are a selector and you're going to drop a player like that, you have to be prepared for people who will say, "Why did you do it?" And it takes courage to be a selector, and I think they did the right thing. That's all I'm saying. But
I didn't mean to disreview, but basically the reason why people would say that is because in this part of the world, and I'm basing this on the discussions that I have with other cricket lovers, in whether it be on social media or elsewhere, the idea of dropping is one of the most widely used words in cricket discussion. And generally speaking, it is seen by cricket fans as a form of punishment.
Yeah, which is sad because they're horses for courses.
Beyond that, there are times when you drop people because, if you want to call it punishment, because, and it might not even be a performance-based thing, it could be a behavioral issue. There are reasons why you leave a person out of a team because they've done something either in terms of their performance for the field or otherwise that you think they need to give them a break. But generally speaking, if you look at good sides, good sides choose their final 11 based on strategy.
Yeah.
And it was a strategic move, in my view, for the selectors to bring back in Shamar Joseph, having had a rest from the games in England, to play on his home ground after Kemar Roach in the heat of Trinidad. I wasn't there, but we were told how hot it was.
Yeah,
Why
it
would
was.
you subject Kemar Roach to that again? To my mind, that would have made no sense.
And I'll tell you something, right? And giving no kudos, I have to give kudos to the management team for something else completely. And I'll tell you what it is. I was keen to see Shamar Joseph back in this team bowling again because all of us were so excited watching him in Australia.
Yeah.
But I have to give the management team and the selectors kudos for the way they have brought him back. They brought him back in England the first test. He had some cramp issues, and it was clear to me that he was not physically ready yet. That having had such a long layoff, he wasn't quite ready. Then they sort of worked with him in England. They came back here clearly and worked with him in nets. They gave him a break in Trinidad. And when he came to bowl today, he was ready. So kudos for the management team for the way they brought him back and prepared him. A few more good things I have to say is this. First of all, let's start with Shamar Joseph. This guy is a phenomenon. Nothing about him makes sense to me. And I'll explain what I mean by that. He has not played 10 test matches in his life. Outside of cricket, he has not played, outside of test matches, he has not played 10 first-class matches. When I watched this guy bowl today, very much as I watched him in that day when he beat Australia almost single-handedly, that made no sense. How could a man who's not having played 10 test matches be so accurate? There was not a ball that the pressure was easy. Batsmen had to play and they had to deal with the ball moving both ways. And they had to deal with his pace. And he did something today which I thought was phenomenal. We saw him in Australia bowling at 145 Ks and 150 Ks. Today, for a long time, he bowled between 135 and 137. And Bavuma came into bat, and suddenly he produced a delivery at 147 kilometers an hour that jagged back significantly. And I felt sorry for poor Bavuma because I couldn't figure out how he could possibly play that delivery. And there's nothing I can say that would be too much kudos for. This guy is a natural. I mean, it is unbelievable that he can do these things, having only just started, not just playing test cricket, but basically playing cricket at any level. And I have to give him kudos for the way he's being prepared. I have to say, Seals is improving as a bowler. When he started, he was clearly a talented bowler, but once the ball was swinging, almost every ball he bowled was an outswinger. These days, you can see him now bowling a straighter ball and sometimes one that actually drifts back in slightly. And that makes him so much more dangerous. And today, at one period, I couldn't figure out how a batsman was going to score off of him and Joseph bowling in tandem. Lastly, in terms of my kudos, I have to say again, in terms of the planning, it was so good to see these guys bowling with some clear plans. When they bowled to Stubbs, it was very clear they were not going to bowl straight at him. They wanted to bowl fifth stump. And eventually, that fifth stump line paid off and he was caught. So, kudos to them. Excellent. I'm sometimes critical of Brathwaite's captaincy because I think sometimes he's a little bit overcautious. I have to give him kudos for a couple of things today. One is that it was clear at some point that you had to rest your seamers. And he brought Warwick in, which I thought was a smart move because Moti did not bowl well in Trinidad. And I was a little surprised because Moti has bowled so well since he came into Test cricket. And I found it very strange how he seemed to quickly lose his confidence as soon as people attacked him in Trinidad. And so I thought it was great to bring Warwick in first, give Moti a chance to settle himself and not lose his confidence. And good move by him. Warwick came in and did a good job of holding things, keeping it tight before lunch just to give the bowlers a rest. And then they came out after lunch and bowled beautifully again. I thought Shamar Joseph dismissed Bellingham in a manner that would be befitting of the most experienced test cricketers of the past, with balls coming into him, one of which was an umpire's call when they reviewed it. Then suddenly went Fuller and straightening a little bit, caught behind. Tremendous setup. And after lunch, when they were really on the back foot, again, I give him kudos for bringing Moti, because I think Moti needs to get his confidence back. I have to say that Moti let his captain down because he came in and he bowled too short. He bowled too many divers that were well over pitch. Again, I give Bradford credit because he stuck with it, because he knows that in the second innings he may need Moti and he needs to get his confidence up. And in his last couple of overs, you could see that he was beginning to get it right. I'm sure that wicket at the end would have helped him. A word on Holder. I think Holder was really good all through. He was not as penetrative as the other two, but he bowled beautiful lines and lengths, didn't give anything away. And that's important in maintaining the pressure. So altogether, apart from Moti taking a while to get his confidence back, I think the West Indies bowled well, but they may well regret that last wicket partnership of 60 odd. That is now looking like a mountain after 17 wickets fell today.
The West Indies batting didn't back up the excellent work of the bowlers. And to my mind, Jason Holder showed again that he's no worse than the batsman. People keep telling me Jason Holder is not good enough to bat at number 6. And I keep saying, what are we talking about here? If you want to say to me, Jason Holder is not a batsman who is of the standard for an international number 6 in Test cricket, we'll say that. But don't tell me that Jason Holder is not good enough to bat at number 6 in this West Indies team, because I want you to identify for me the batsmen in this West Indies team who have better track records than Jason Holder.
Well, let me start here. Not even with track record. Here's where I'll start. When Jason Holder came back to the West Indies team in England, in his first test, you could see it was very clear he needed more work playing red ball cricket because he wasn't quite up to speed for Test cricket yet. Both with his bowling and his batting, you could see he was not quite there. But from that first test in England until now, every time he has batted better and better and better. And I will say this, today that pitch was challenging. And I cannot think of a batsman today on either side that handled it better than Jason Holder. I was somewhat fascinated when I watched him bat, because he was the only batsman today that did not particularly seem troubled. And let us be clear, that was a wicket that was definitely giving help to the bowlers. And every other batsman seemed to be challenged and seemed to struggle. But Holder was beautiful today in his foot movement. When the ball is moving around and you want to drive, you have to get that foot close to the ball, and he did. He picked the right balls to be attacking. He was very, very good in his selections of the ones to leave, the ones to drive, the ones to go back. And I thought he was really good. Now, I've probably put my mouth on him, and tomorrow he might get a good one early on. But the truth is, he was really good today. So I can't say. Outside of Holder, I have to say,
if he doesn't carry on tomorrow, I still argue that he's no worse than the other players.
Oh, no.
And if there's a player who is not good enough to make it in the West Indies, in this current West Indies team, where we have only Greg Braffett averaging over 30.
Yeah.
Well, you can count Casey. Casey Carty is in his third innings, and he's probably averaging over 30. But obviously, I'm talking about guys who would have played a bit more.
Who's played a bit longer.
If there are guys who are not good enough to make this side, then the batsmen are not averaging 35. Right. You're saying to me that there's someone out of this West Indies team who should be in the West Indies side batting at number 6 and who also has the ability to bowl. I can only think of one such person who we can put into that category. Is a guy called Ruston Chase.
Called who?
Ruston Chase.
Oh, Ruston Chase. Okay, yeah. Well, Philip, you know what? I've heard you say a few things about Ruston Chase and his omission, but given the way things go these days, I'd like to hear whether he was available or not, because I'm not sure that he was. If he was, I would think it would make a lot of, like, for instance, today, that last wicket partnership with a left-hander batting, I think his off spin would have been an excellent option. But I cannot criticize the selectors without knowing if he was or was not available. And I honestly don't know, because you know how it is these days. Players are busy doing all kinds of other things and earning money. And you have to be clear on whether they were ignored by selectors or if they simply were not available. So I'll be cautious.
Let me be clear. Let me be clear. I'm not trying to criticize the selectors here.
Right.
I'm simply stating my feelings on Roston Chase and other cricketers as I have done, in programs like this from time to time. So it's not a matter of criticizing the selectors. In fact, if there's going to be criticism, I think that criticism may more be the PR department, because we should not be sitting wondering if Roston Chase or anybody else
absolutely agree, Philip. Absolutely. I think
we don't have to know what they're doing. All we need to know is that such and such a person was not available for selection. For personal reasons.
I think that's a courtesy that the fans deserve. But I will say this before we go.
All these things impact, right, on where you have empty stand. Because if you expect people to take hard-earned money to go and spend it to watch cricket, but you don't respect them enough to interact with them and inform them, well, come on, Deighton. If you're going to hold an event, you're going to hold some event at some place, Barbados. I mean, look at the crop over events. You know that any private entity holding a crop over event doesn't behave like that. You don't disrespect the people who you expect to come.
But I do have to say one more thing on this subject of Roston Chase. Roston Chase played one game this year in the first class 4-day competition. He was only available for that one. And I watched that entire game, and he was head and shoulders above everyone else in that game on both sides. He scored 100 in very few balls, in which he dominated the bowling. I mean, and then he with the ball, he was very good. So I have no doubt that he has elevated his game to a level right now where he's certainly good enough to play in this team. But he's not playing, so let's not dwell on that.
He's not playing. So let's look at day 2 and your expectations, your hopes, your desires.
Well,
how you want to express it.
The first thing that has to happen is this. I whenever you have to start over, it's always a question mark there. But if the West Indies can get through the first couple of overs, and Holder can find the judgment that he had today in picking which balls to defend, which to leave, which to attack, and he can get a little help from the tail holding on, I think we have to try to get as close as we can to that 160. And we have to bear this in mind, because if you have to ask me right now, I'd say that South Africa is slightly ahead for this reason. West Indies have to bat last. And by the time we bat at the end of this, in our second innings, I'm sure Maharaj is going to be a bigger factor. Today, he had already started to get some turn, and he'll be a factor in that inning. So I think when having bowled him out cheaply, and we should have bowled him out more cheaply, I think we should have been looking for a lead of 100 runs at least. And right now, we will struggle to get any lead. We might very well find ourselves with a deficit. So we have to bat very, very much better in our second. But tomorrow, we got to get as close as we can. We have to come out certainly and bowl as well as we did today. And after that, we have to bat for our lives in that last innings. I have to say that Craig Brathwaite continues to struggle, and a lot will depend in the second innings on whether he can find a bit of form and hang around and steer these guys through. And I have to say that Casey Carty has done well in a couple of games he's coming, and we have to hope that he does well in second innings. And I want to make a point here that I'm looking for in second innings. In Australia, Hodge fell a couple of times in his slips playing away from his body. Then he curbed that in one innings and he made 80 odd. He went to England and he did the same thing. He curbed that tendency and he made 100. And then he started playing away from his body again. And today he got caught in the slips playing away from his body. So I hope he goes away and thinks about it and says, let me curb that inclination again, because we have a hell of a lot of batting to do if we want to win this match.
Deighton Smith, always good chatting with you, and it's always good when you share your tremendous knowledge and experience, not only your many days on the cricket field, but as an administrator and knowing the inner workings of Barbados and West Indies cricket. I would invite our viewers to make sure that at the end you like and subscribe to our channel, because we certainly would want to share your comments, Deighton, with as wide an audience as possible. And we look forward to hearing from you again before this series is over.
Thank you, Phil.